Well, hello Internet. Welcome to Monday the 13th of July 2020. And me, Dakion, welcoming you to some rambling about miniatures. Let's start out with finished stuff, and we're starting out with the Reaper Bones here. And, well, first thing, let's talk about this one the first because it's the easiest. It's simply the pack turtle or tortoise from the Dreadmere set, which I speed painted pretty simply. There's not much to say about this guy really. His pack still looks overwhelmingly brown because what you're gonna do. But at least I tried to make the straps a much lighter color so it pops and it looks a little bit more varied. Next up, we have this guy, which you haven't seen for a while. He belongs to the Bloodstone Gnomes that I painted a while back. The reason I haven't shown this guy before because he was part of that competition, the painting competition on the Reaper Facebook page. So I couldn't reveal to my fans in ahead of time which model was mine, according to the rules, at least how I read them. So it didn't turn out very well. Out of 53 entries, I was in place 32, so not even in the upper half. And I mean, part of that was that the way I photographed it washed out. There was too much harsh lighting, which didn't do it any favors. You'll see that in the still pics at the end. And part of it was that I simply wasn't inspired. I mean, I spent more time on the... No, I didn't spend more time, but I'm happier with the lava base than with the actual mini, because I didn't like the mini that much. And it was a rough bones sculpt. I'm a little concerned that some of the contestants might have used the metal version of it instead of the bones version, which would be cheating, but I'll just have to hope that the Reaper was on top of that. But anyway, I would not have won in any case. So I kind of learned from that what people who vote like. They like bright colors and they like contrast. That is the thing to go for. And of course, you know, quality painting as well, but you know, if there were two equally well that I could tell technically equally well painted minis, the one with the more contrast would win. And in fact, the final winner to me, when you looked closely at the photo, was kind of rough. I mean, the transitions were not well blended. It was done with a very I don't know what to call it, but a rough technique. I'm not sure how to describe it, but anyway. But just looking, not zooming in on the picture, just looking at it on like maybe your phone, on the in your Facebook feed, yeah, I can see why that one won. It clearly pops in that context. So okay, I might have to adapt to that next time. But it's going to be hard because the next time, the very next contest is already happening this week. It's the special contest for the painting the rock, which I'm going to be showing. I'm not going to show you in this episode, but I will be entering into that contest as well. And the rock is such a huge mini that if you're going to photograph it so you show the whole thing, there's no way that will... It's going to look weird on a small screen however you do it. But, you know, that's going to be the same problem for everyone. So, we'll see. The next quarterly competition won't be like for another 3 months, obviously. and they haven't announced the model for that yet. I hope they pick something this time which is only available in bones, so people aren't tempted to cheat. Anyway, the final guy here, who was front and center when I first started talking to you, was the brain in a jar. And I did an experiment here which had sort of interesting effects. Now the actual jar, there's not much, it's just a lot of paint, mostly metallics, some colors, and the brain is painted, and then I submerged it completely in transparent resin. You can perhaps see the border here at the top where the resin ends, and there's air on top of that. It had some effects that I didn't expect. At first there were some air bubbles in it, and I was happy with that because that made it look like there was actual fluid in the jar, but the bubbles have gone away as the resin is set, unfortunately. A small secondary effect is that there are places where the resin is set unevenly, so there's like some transparent clumps in a few places. But you only see that if you look very closely. But the big thing is it creates an optical illusion. The resin seems to have a sort of magnifying glass effect, so the brain looks bigger than it actually is. It looks like it's filling the entire jar up till the edges, but it's not. I can promise you, the model itself is not that big because it would not have fit through the top of the jar. So the resin is working like a funhouse mirror and distorting the image of the brain underneath. And you can sort of tell that the portion of the brain sticking up from the fluid here is smaller. You know, I mean, it's also smaller because it's the top and it's spreading out, but you know what I mean. So yeah, I don't know if I would actually recommend going this way. I mean, the others I've seen, every picture I've seen online of this model, they've simply left it nothing in. They've simply used air. There's no fluid in there at all. I thought that looked boring, and I didn't think putting water in was a good idea. I mean, you could put water in, I suppose, if you really like varnished the brain, gloss varnish, like several coats, really hard. That might withstand the water and not have it eat away at the paint job. But I didn't want to risk it, and I wanted to try this new resin that I had. So, well, you be the judge if it succeeded or not. Man, I've talked a lot about these. Let's move on to what else I've finished. Oh, now we get into the majority of the stuff I finished this week. It's these Stungle Basin Heroes dwarves. And evil dwarves, evil armored dwarves, I painted them where their skin showing. I've painted the gray like Dwerga, dark dwarves from D&D, because I thought that would be appropriate. There's not a lot of skin. This one is the only one that has a face showing. In the others, it's just hands and parts of legs in some cases, or the chest and back on this guy. And I painted them like red-orange hair. Did the fires green to contrast the red hair and beards, and also to show that it's magic flame. And yeah, nothing really. I considered using like colored metallics or something for the armor, but I decided, no, that's too much work. They're pretty okay as it is. You'll see in more detail in the still pics. And they had this little demon dog included with the eyes on it. I didn't really know what to do with him, so I just painted him red and then made funny eyes along the body. And he has a mouth in his tail, which is kind of interesting. But the models out of this set that I'm most happy with are actually these like rock elementals. I think these turned out really nicely. They're good sculpts with a lot of clear definition and difference between the parts, and that helped in the painting. And then I decided it looked like they had these little crystals or something on them, and decided to go with more colors on them to make it look more interesting than just plain old gray. That's always a good thing to get some color in there. And that's what I finished. So you'll see I did not finish the Halflings. You'll see those in a moment. But part of the reason is I spent a lot of time on the Rock, which again I'm not going to show you this week, and probably not next week either, because the cutoff date for the contest is this week. I believe on Thursday is the last day I have to send in my picks. And then they'll put up the gallery in the weekend, and it'll be up for a week. So I can't talk about which one is mine until 2 weeks from now, when the contest is over. But let's just say I've tried to learn the lessons from the last contest and do the painting and photography a little bit differently to try to get a better result. Again, the quality of the entrance was pretty high, so I have no delusions about winning this one either. But hopefully I can place a bit better. You know, my ambition is to be in the top half this time of the contestants. So let's shoot for that, and we'll move on from there. Anyway, let's look at some works in progress that I can show you. Now, there's really not been much progress on the Halflings. Some more undercoating is all that's happened, really. The progress I've made is... I don't remember if I mentioned this, but these two figures, I don't think they're Halflings actually, because they have boots and they are somewhat bigger than the Halflings and more muscular. They're probably dwarves, like good dwarves that are on the Halfling side, or something similar to that, but, well. Anyway, if I can just get the time to sit down and work on these, they're not that difficult to churn out. They're rather simplistic minis after all. So I have high hopes for their future. Now here's a slew of stuff that's not primed yet, in some cases not even assembled yet. And the reason I haven't primed any of these that I finished assembling is that I want to prime them all at once. So I gotta finish these 4 guys before we move on to the next phase. But as you can see, there's a mix of stuff. There's the Reaper figures, the headsmen, the Australian animals, and then there's these fantasy football characters, including some of the bigger ones, really big resin pieces. Now, one reason I'm not done with these is it takes quite a long time to assemble them because there is so much work to do. I don't know if you can tell with all the gap filling. Getting these together, I mean, they're nice sculpts, but they're not well cast and they're not well cut up for casting and assembly. The fit is not good at all. So there's quite a lot of work I have to do to get them to go together. And specifically looking at these guys, I've found that there seems to be pieces missing, because a lot of these, let's see if I can show you, for example, this head has these little holes behind his eyes. I don't know if they're supposed to be horns. I don't think a hippo head has horns. Is it supposed to be ear holes? Because there's no horns or antenna or anything included that can stick in there. That's perhaps not as important, but here on this rhino, this clearly looks like there should be some extra horns there, but there were none in the kits. I don't know. Well, what do I know about rhinos? Again, maybe these are ear holes? Nah, it doesn't really look like them. I guess I'll have to cover them up. I'll have to fill them in and say that it's broken off horns or filed off horns or something. So that was annoying. And as you can see, they're cut up into a lot of different pieces, and so there's a lot of assembly, and I assume these are also going to have a bad fit like the previous models did, so it's gonna take a couple of days. But, you know, progress is made, and sooner or later they will be ready for painting. Okay, so I googled some images of rhinos and hippos, and they're supposed to have ears, like big ears, well, relatively big ears that stand out in the places these holes are. And those were not in the kits. No ears. I don't know what to do about that. Sculpt something. Little green stuff bits, maybe. I'll think about it. Well, you'll see next week, whatever I decided to do. Now, since for various reasons I did not even get started on these guys, which I showed you last week in their plastic bag, now I've at least taken them out, so there's some new information for you. These are the remaining humans or almost humans from the Dreadmere set of the Bones 4 Kickstarter. So there's 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 people, and the reason these are I didn't paint these at the same time as the other civilians is that these are more clearly adventuring types. Some of them might be villains, and most of them have weapons out. This guy doesn't. He has his great sword or long sword on his back, which is, as Scholar Gladiatoria points out, unrealistic, but anyway, it's a movie logic. And this guy might be, or girl? I thought she might be a headsman, but no, she's got armor on. So is this guy a headsman? Some sort of woodsman with an axe. Anyway, I haven't painted any of these bones in a while now. I mean, the past week has been bones free. So I really need to get back on that and start chipping away at the Kickstarter to try to finish that off. So yes, these I will prep and prime and so forth for next Monday. And you know, there's still some stuff left from this week. So do I need to add more? Well, a little bit more. I thought I would put some more Reaper on the schedule. So I went back to, I think I got this last year in one of my monthly Reaper orders. It's the Manticore. It's the old metal Manticore from Dark Heaven series. I think I painted a Bones Manticore at one point, but not this metal one. An interesting thing here, well, I don't know how interesting it is, but the thing I'd like to point out that this is a pretty old sculpt, and as you can see, it's kind of almost two-dimensional. It's the wings that add three-dimensionality to it. This is a kind of a flat pose, which is something that is considered anathema these days, but is typical of older sculptures. And you know what? A dirty secret of painters is that I kind of like these flat poses because, you know what? dynamic poses are much harder to paint. Dynamic poses tend to obscure parts of the model and you know, make them harder to get to. This thing is completely open and accessible for the paintbrush from all directions. So that pleases me. Anyway, I thought I needed a metal model to add to all the plastic, so I'm working on a bit of both. And of course, no new arrivals this week. I'm hoping that this month's Reaper order will arrive by next Monday, so I can get started on some of those models. That's the only thing that's really set to arrive anytime soon. There's that Midlam Kickstarter that I think I've mentioned a few times. The latest information that I got from that Kickstarter still places arrival of that at least 3-4 weeks out. So not expecting that immediately. But anyway, that was this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Click like if you did. Give it a thumbs up. Comment on what you thought was especially interesting. Subscribe if you haven't done so before. And most importantly, come back again in a week from now. Same day of week, same channel, same Dakian. But for now, I'm signing off.